Hello, this is April 7th, 2021. As the World Burns, I'm your host, Randall Burns. Now, I first got exposed professionally to forecasting technologies while working on a credit card fraud detection system database integration with HNC at one of their problem customers. And that was important because it was one of the very first public, profitable applications of neural nets and big data methods. The stuff that was around at the time was stuff like stock trading systems, and those folks were pretty tight-lipped about what they were doing. There were a lot of rumors they were doing interesting stuff, but they weren't talking much about it. Robert Mercer, Donald Trump's patron, was around at the time in this area, and I heard about some of the stuff that his team was doing. But from the start that I was involved in it, I really had the feeling that this should be more about just making rich people richer, that this could be really used to help people. And that got confirmed in me when the pandemic hit. And there was a lot of noise around just what was the pandemic going to do. And a lot of traditional forecasting methods were not really appropriate in the situation because they simply didn't have the data that you needed. And a site like Metaculus can at least take a stab at stuff with minimalistic data. And so they did open a pandemic forecasting site, and I got involved with that and put quite a bit of energy into it. One of the first forecasts I did was a US death count projection. And it turns out that mine was more accurate than others that were done at the same time, like that at the Gates Foundation. One interesting feature of that is that it's continually updated. So like you can go to the 2020 forecast and you can, for example, see the uptick during the anti-lockdown protests, the BLM protests, and the Trump rallies. And it's just, that's what the projection does. It responds pretty much instantly when these unexpected events come up. And it leaves a record, and I think it's a valuable record. The current forecast for 2021 deaths in the US is 309,000, which is too many. But at least it's stabilizing a bit. Now, the current projection for the date that the US will reach herd immunity is September 2021. And that means that it's unlikely that when people do get infected, they're going to be able to transmit it to other people. And there's a threshold for that in that definition. It does appear likely that a new strain will become 70% of new cases in New York in the next few months. Okay, so that's something that's cautionary. And as these strains proliferate, it's possible they may circumvent existing vaccines. The broad availability of vaccines is projected by metaculus to be May 31st. One thing about the current crop of vaccines that needs to be mentioned is they are very good at keeping people from getting sick or getting hospitalized. They are not as obviously effective at preventing asymptomatic infection. And that is why you may need to use these in conjunction with masks and rapid antigen tests. And that's something it's a little bit murky. The area is not well documented yet. First, the broad eligibility will be May 1st, according to metaculus. And metaculus projects that 1 billion people will be vaccinated on October 12th, 2021. So that's a substantial portion of the world's population and will probably be concentrated in the areas that are where there's the most travel and most likely to be broad infection as a result. Now, one really encouraging projection is that Amazon is projected to have rapid antigen tests available for sale online on May 25th. Now, the person describes what that means, and I'll include this link also, is Professor Michael Minnow at Harvard Public Health. And Professor Minnow he's an MD PhD. He has forgone massive consulting fees to walk these antigen tests through the regulatory process. And he's put hundreds of unpaid hours into this. He's really, truly one of the heroes of the pandemic. And I just can't say good enough things about the man. And his basic point in a nutshell is that rapid antigen tests are not particularly good as a diagnostic test. They don't tell you if somebody's been infected necessarily. What they do tell you is if somebody is capable of infecting others now or within the next 48 hours, which is very important for certain applications, like screening people for visiting a loved one in a nursing home. That's the test you want. It's convenient, it's cheap, and they can get to see their loved one. And the only catch is that you have to retest frequently. You can't, after 48 hours, the test needs to be redone. It isn't valid anymore. And these tests are being used right now on cruise ships operating overseas. The cruise ship industry, to their credit, has been the only major aspect of the hospitality industry that has embraced rapid testing. And I think they are very much doing the right thing. I linked to a National Geographic article describing some of this. My only criticisms is I think there could be a little bit more transparency involved. They could document their results. And I don't know if they're rigidly following the kind of testing protocols that Professor Minnow recommends. But they are doing something. And if you look at their stock prices, the markets agree. This is a case where, their stocks are ticking up because they apparently seem to be doing the right thing and something that's very important. And one of the things that public health authorities tend to forget is not just what is optimal, but what is doable. And these cruise ships could provide a very important safety valve for populations that would otherwise be isolated. A place where they can let their hair down, a place where they can be with other people in a relatively safe situation. And it really may be the safest place to party in 2021. And yes, is there some risk? Yes, but people need a life. Humans are social animals, and we don't want to press people further than they can go. And I would mainly like to see more bars and restaurants and resorts following the lead of the cruise ship industry and doing something similar. That's what I would personally like to see. I also linked to a Motley Fool article that is fairly recent on this. And I've made a very small position in cruise ship stocks personally. I think that as the data and studies come in, I think it's going to prove they are doing something effective and the right thing. And right now, I think that the jump of the stock has just started, and we'll see more later. But this is Randall Burns discussing pandemic trends in 2021. Thank you for joining me. Please do like this video, comments for new episodes suggestions are especially welcome. Subscribe to the channel. It helps out the channel quite a bit. And thank you again for joining me. This is Randall Burns signing off.